Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Yes, yes, we can.
All right. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. And you're all welcome. You're very, very welcome to today's session. And so as we said, as we had advertised, so today we have a special guest with us. We have Mrs. Bukola Smith with us, who's our Executive Director at First City Monument Bank. And we'll be talking about the journey to the boardroom. Now, why is this important? So many times, when we get on the career path, we tend to wonder, how do we get from point A to point B? And ultimately, if you're going to the director level, which is where she's at, then the question is, how does that happen? What does that journey look like? Is it stop and start? Is it linear? Should you even aspire to it? Is it a possibility? Is it a possibility for you? And if so, how do you prepare yourself? So how can we prepare ourselves? So we're going to be learning a lot, from her. So I'd like us to listen with open eyes, open ears, open minds, write a lot of notes, write a lot your questions. If you have any, take a lot of notes. Some people had sent questions in advance, which I'll be sharing with her. But before we go into it, let me just formally read out so you're aware of who it is that we're talking to and who's giving us her time today. So today, the session is going to be from 4 to 5:30. So that gives us time for sufficient Q&A. So she's going to have, I'll be asking her a few questions, she'll share with us. And then if you have any questions, then we can take it from there. So, but we'll put a hard stop at 5:30 max. If we can finish earlier, that will be fine. So Bukola Smith is a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, and she has over 27 years banking experience, having worked in most banking sectors. She has been with First City Monument Bank since November 2006, handling different roles, including Divisional Head, Treasury and Financial Markets, Divisional Head, Group Internal Audit and Regional Director, Lagos, very diverse roles. Currently, she's FCMB's Executive Director, Business Development, where she oversees the branches of the bank across the country. This is over 200 plus branches, by the way, and across different product segments, transaction banking, agribusiness, business banking group, and public sector segments. And she takes full responsibility for the financial budgets of these respective businesses. In addition, she sits on the board of CSL Stockbrokers and FCMB Trustee Limited. So she's a 3-time director. In the last 2 years, she has been actively involved in projecting women in business and was instrumental in setting up FCMB's proposition for women-owned and women-managed businesses branded She Ventures. She Ventures focuses on 4 main pillars of support: access to finance, access to knowledge, access to markets, and access to networks, and has impacted over 2,000 female-owned businesses in the last 1 year under these pillars. So Bukola also serves as a mentor at Women in Successful Careers, that's WISCA, from inception to 2008 to date, and has mentored several women within this network. As a way of giving back to society, she also mentors with Invent, Leadership Summit, and Mentorship Program 3.0, where she speaks with pupils from various public secondary schools, giving them insight they need to make the right choices with respect to their course, their choices and career paths. She also has, so it's not all work, she also has hobbies, which includes swimming and walking. So you see that the person that's speaking to us today has indeed a huge range of experience, in addition to which, she's also a very good friend of mine, and I have learned, she doesn't know this, but she's also mentored me, so I've never sat down with her to say, be my mentor, but I have observed her, I have watched her over a number of years, and I've learned quite a bit from her. So I'd like us to please make very, very welcome Mrs. Bukola Smith. So Buki, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Hello, Relayo. It's nice to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for gracing us. So we know your schedule is really, really tight. So thank you for the time. So we'd like to go straight to it. So before we do, let's do a quick icebreaker. So what is it that people don't know about you? We've talked a lot about work. What is it that people don't know about you?
Okay, interesting. I like to take Gary and granuts. And it's a joke. A number of us in my family, my siblings and I actually joke about it. A few days ago, my brother, who is the chief of the Gary Eaters, sent a message saying there was a competition for Gary Eaters. Eat Gary for 7 days and you win 7 million naira. And we joked amongst ourselves that one is not hard work. It's very easy for us to do. So yes. Yeah.
You can knock that one out very, very easily. All right, so another question is, what is your favorite book? Which book has impacted you the most?
Interesting. So it's a book, interesting that you mentioned that. And aside from the Bible, and I'm not going to get spiritual here, but aside from the Bible, I'll say a book called Outliers. And Outliers by Malcolm, I've forgotten Malcolm's surname now, but a guy called Malcolm, yes. And Outliers because it speaks about the different personalities and the skill sets of different people and what makes people succeed in life, not necessarily being the norm, things out of the ordinary that could help you succeed.
Fantastic, fantastic. So reading is important, we can see that.
Yes, yes, yes.
As an Ijebu woman, I understand the drinking Gary part, but let's will. So now when we talk about the boardroom, the journey to the boardroom, so the audience here, we have a mixed multitude. We have different people who are at different levels in their careers. So there are some who are in the early stages, some who are middle, and some already at senior levels. And always, ultimately the goal is, that goal is to get to the boardroom, which you have achieved. So most people tend to think that the journey to the boardroom is meant to follow a linear path. You go from step 1 to step 2, but your career path, when we're going through it, has been quite interesting and quite diverse. So could you talk us through your journey to the boardroom and the most notable experiences you've had on the way?
Okay, excellent. Thank you for that very insightful question. And I'll just take you through my journey. I'll speak a bit about my background and I'll then talk about my career. Because again, my background has been a significant influence on who I am today. So I'm one of those privileged people who have their parents that have been quite influential in their lives. My mom is a retired banker. She worked for Barclays and Union Bank for many years. And my father worked in government and as an economist. So those two people have been role models in my life, and they have obviously role played over the years when it comes to my career and decisions. So speaking directly, and as a result of that, growing up, also, there have been certain things that have been imbibed in us. I remember I used to be in the Brownies as a child, and Brownies was the lower version or the younger version of the Girls Guide. I then grew into being a Girls Guide. And one of the things that I learned as a Brownie, which has stuck with me, is actions speak louder than words. And also growing up into secondary school, I went to school in Holy Child College. Our watchword also was action, not words. Those things have been key things that have, gone across everything that I do through my journey in life. And then speaking to my career too, that has also been a huge impact in my career. So yes, execution is always at the front burner of everything that I do. So strategy is important, but executing the strategy is also very critical. So I'll start into my career path and you'll see how those things actually link. And so I started off banking. Again, I've always wanted to be a banker. I dream, think banking. I don't think I can do anything else.
But you want nosedive straight into it.
So I've known I wanted to be a banker right from get-go, from my secondary school. And I was fortunate. I did vacation jobs because my mom was in banking. And so I did vacation jobs over all summer working in banks. So those were the platforms that helped me start off. So I then came into banking at early stages. I had done all areas of banking, like you rightly said. I started from operations. But I then formed the bulk of my career in treasury. And so as treasurer, as somebody in treasury, I then grew into being treasurer. I've been treasurer of 2 banks over this period. One of them, of course, is FCMB. And I remember that in treasury, people rarely want to leave treasury. After doing treasury for a few years, I remember walking up to my CEO at that point and saying that, look, I am tired, I need to do something else. So I was one of those people that I knew 2 things. I needed a broader knowledge. I didn't want to just constrain myself in that field of treasury, because when I looked around, my aim really has always been to get to the CEO level in banking. So when I looked around, only very few treasurers made it to MD CEO. I'm not saying none made it, a few did, but I knew that I needed to have a variety of experience. Yes, it's good to have your core experience in one area and be a subject matter expert, but I also knew that I needed to broaden that base. I also had a deputy who I knew needed to also breathe and needed to also grow, had career aspirations too. And I didn't want to just sit there all through and not give him that chance. I felt that the organization would lose him if I just stayed put. So those were the reasons why I then had that conversation, amongst others, with my CEO. And of course, he was excited to hear, you mean you want to leave Treasury? And I was like, yeah, I want to try something else. And that then moved me into another area of the bank, which was investment banking. I then supervised the registrar business. I set up at that point in time what is now called FCMB trustees. So I was supervising about 3 or 4 different activities. And for me, those were very interesting periods of my career. It worked out, well. I learned a lot. And one thing I realized in my career, and for everyone listening, that you must never stop learning. You must learn, and learn. Very critical that we are always learning and always challenging ourselves and not just being comfortable with our comfort zone. For me, Treasury was my comfort zone. Stepping out of it was a bit challenging, but I settled into the role quite nicely and we continued therein. At some point in time, there was another opportunity that opened up in the organization at a point in time. It wasn't a role that I particularly wanted, and I'm sure Rolaya remembers that role. But then looking at my CV, the institution had a need at that point in time, and I was one of the few people that had that qualification. And there was a discussion around that. Initially, I didn't want to take the role. I was a bit upset that role was actually even offered to me. And it was the role of the internal auditor of the bank at that point in time, yes. But I took the role after having conversations with my husband about it. And honestly, that role, in my view, was a fantastic role. I spent 3 years in that role. And what it did to me was also open me up to all of the organization, the branch, operations, understanding issues around fraud, networking with the police, etc., etc. And it opened me up to a lot of other things that I didn't realize in most of my other roles that had been more profit-oriented front office. So again, another learning point for me there was don't close out, when discussions are being had around, your career, things that may not necessarily appear to be for your own good or your own interest, eventually turns around for your own good. At that point in time, I can't say for sure whether, I didn't feel that the organization had my interest at that point in time. But honestly, looking back, and I have actually gone back to my CEO, my former CEO then, and thanked him for that role. Because what I learned, was a lot more than actually I expected. And it not being a profit-based role helps me do other things. It was at that point in time that I then added some more, academic things to myself. I went to do an MBA in that role. So sometimes in life, life throws those things your way, but take it up, learn whatever you can learn from the experience, and you find out that you're better off for it. Interestingly, right after I finished my my MBA, my then CEO called me again and says, I have another role for you. And I think at this point in time, they had come to realize that because of my experience and my willingness to look at other opportunities, they could continue to offer me things that would actually add up. And that then took me back into what I would call a front office role, which is my natural area of comfort, which was when I became the regional director of Lagos. So from there, I then moved on straight into the board as executive director after a couple of years. So, for me, those were the things that I feel that helped me even at the board level. The variety of experience that I had, ability to converse regarding different topics, ability to talk about, add value when discussions are being had about different areas of banking. I think those were the things that, in addition to my ability to execute, also helps me at the board level. So yeah, so for me, so that would be in a summary what I believe has been my journey. Interesting one for me. Did I start off expecting the journey to be that way? Some of them, yes. Some not exactly, but they've all added up for my good, and I'm really grateful for the opportunities I've had over the years. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. So it's been, your story is like a TV series, right? So it sounds like there's a cliffhanger. What next?
Yes.
What's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? Well, you said two things, a few things that I'd like to touch on. Just going back on what you just said now, when you talked about taking up roles you don't necessarily want, that willingness, because I think at some point in time for everyone here, and I know some people have reached out to me that sometimes they want to leave an organization because what they've been asked to do is not what they want. But what you're saying is that could actually be the stepping stone to something else. So if you can talk us through that, what was that? How did you talk yourself through that?
Okay, so that I would say was a defining moment in my career. It could either have made me or break me, career-wise. But luckily, again, I had one or two people around me that could talk sense into my brain at that point in time, because I don't think, looking back now, I probably wasn't thinking well, at that point in time, I'll use that word. But just coming back and so I have a network, an excellent network, a support network, which my husband is one of the main members. In fact, he's the, of that club, and he's my greatest fan and my greatest critic. So he was able to talk some sense to me to say, look, think about this thing. This is not a bad role. It actually adds up to your variety of experiences. So thinking back, after that conversation I had with him, I started thinking about it to say, okay, maybe after all, you're a chartered accountant, you're a fellow of the institute, you do have this experience. Yes, it was a back office role. I'm a front office person in my view, but hey, eat your humble pie and go and learn, roll up your sleeves and go and learn. And that's exactly what I did. It wasn't an area that I was very familiar with, but just, learning from the team members that I worked with, and they were excellent. There was such an incredible set of people there, learning with them, bringing in my own ideas, also working with their own ideas. They were just a set of fantastic people. I changed at that point in time. I looked at the audit, the function, and I decided, look, it's not meant to be a police role all the time. Can we add some more flavor into it and make it a bit more exciting? And we did that, and the team were all excited about it. And today, what they do, the approach they use now is something that we jointly created. And they have seen that they can add value much more than what they were doing in time past. So for me, it's very fulfilling. Would I do that role again? The answer is yes. So my advice to anyone that is in that position, sometimes it doesn't look green on that side. Take it up, take the advantage, take the challenge. It's a challenge, and go and prove that you can do it. And that was what it was for me. I was able to prove that this can be done, and I did it, and it has added on to my whole variety of experience. So I'll just encourage anyone that's in that position, don't give up. It might not look good, it might not look right, but take it up and learn from it. Once you have that ability, once you have that willingness to learn, you will benefit from that, any experience that comes your way.
Thank you. So the next thing you said was also that you prepared your successor. Now, sometimes, especially in corporate world, where you feel that you should you sort of like guarding your role, that nobody should know what you know, because that's what makes you special. Because sometimes people think that if somebody else knows what I know, then I'm not special anymore. But what I heard you say, you took the time to prepare your successor. So did you feel challenged by that? Why did you take that step?
So one of my mantras in life, and for me, it's always been, what's your impact? What value are you adding to the next person? What are you doing to enrich other people's lives, both from the workforce and in life generally? So I've never been a sit-down person, if I may use the Nigerian parlance. I've always been one person that believes in, bringing up other people, getting them ready. So for me, it's always my joy when people behind me are doing very well. I think that I thrive even when my guys are doing very well. I don't see that it takes anything out of me. I actually think it adds a lot to me, to you, when people you have nurtured are doing very well. So for me, it's never been a threat. And I always remember this proverb that says that if you want 1 year of prosperity, you grow a grain. If you want 10 years of prosperity, grow a tree. But if you want 100 years of prosperity, grow people. And that sticks with me all the time. So for me, grow people, grow people, grow people. So it was never a threat for me that, he was doing well, or that I needed to leave that role for him, not at all. And similarly, in all my other areas too, my goal is always to make people better than me and make sure that they can also get into that role. I think it's a smack on supervisors, on people. If when you leave a place, there's really nobody that can take over from you. When you leave a role, there's nobody can take over. I don't think it speaks well about you.
So that what you just said is so almost like counterculture to what we see.
Yeah.
Because this feeling is that, why should I grow you? Because if I grow you, you become better than me. Whereas, as you said, if you want to grow that tree, if you want to, then you grow people, then everybody grows. There's room for everyone else.
There is room. Yeah.
That at some point in time, ego needs to take a back seat.
Yes. So it's difficult, I know, but when you don't feel threatened and you know what you know, which is why, again, you constantly must educate yourself. You must make sure that you're on top of your game. You must know what you know and keep, improving on that knowledge. So for me, I'm reading. When I need to go to school, I go to school. So, and I think that for me, during this pandemic, it was an opportunity. I did some of those short courses during this period to also help me, keep on top of my game. And I'm reading, you're reading, and, getting more knowledge at every point in time. So that way you don't feel threatened by the next person.
Mindset shift, that's a mindset shift. You said, so speaking to what you just said about helping other people, so you play a very active role in Whisker, and other organizations, focus on developing women in particular, which would have exposed you to women facing various challenges as they're growing in their careers. I think so for women it's a little bit different from men, particularly for when a woman starts her career, and then if she decides to have a family, so that period tends to be at cross purposes with career growth, yeah. And she has to try. So what role do you think women can play in being strategic and intentional about keeping the door open for other women, knowing that there's this institutional infrastructural challenge?
Okay, fantastic. So I think that as senior women or women helping other women, first of all, there's a lot other women, those women need to do themselves. So again, knowledge. You must ensure that you are on top of your game, that you know your onions. Nobody's going to recommend you because you're a woman if you're not good. I don't subscribe to that. So you must be a subject matter expert. You must be bringing up value to the table so that then encourages other women to bring you up. They always talk about the boys, men, and the men's club. So I would encourage that for women, networking is also important. So whatever it is that makes you happy, and I'm glad we're having events like this, which also helps improve knowledge and some networking to some extent. And there are many other networking organizations. There's the Whisker, Wimbies, etc. that I would encourage us to all join, formal networking and also the informal networking. So in the midst of those networks, you meet other women that can hopefully, recommend you once you're interacting with fellow women and they know you have values to add, an emphasis on value. They will then recommend you when there are openings. And that's what the men have done very well. Because they meet up in different areas, they have those discussions among themselves, and they know who knows what, and they then make those recommendations when they ask. So we need to continue to do that. I see that over the last 5-10 years, we have been doing that. I think women, we've started encouraging one another. We are no longer as competitive as we used to be in the time past, which is very good. I see that women are collaborating a lot more now and encouraging one another. So, we will continue to do that for ourselves. When they are in an organization, we need to also help bring up women. Let your colleagues, for instance, I'll let my colleagues know when I feel that this woman is doing well, she's not being heard, I need to create some level of visibility for her within the organization. So we need to help ourselves by creating those levels of visibility. We women tend to, and I'm guilty of that too, we tend to want to stay in the background. Let our work speak for us is what we say. It's good for our work to speak for us, but it's also important that our faces speak for us too, and our voices also speak for us. So when we have the opportunity to bring other women up, that don't have that chance, talk to your colleagues, talk to your seniors about the value that lady is adding. Sometimes we do a lot of work, but it's subsumed under other people's own activities and other people, and I know, Rola, you know what I'm talking about. Other people take the glory when somebody else has done the work. So it's our responsibility to ensure that we are bringing up those women and let it be known that these are the ones that are actually adding that value. One other thing I would do, when I did my MBA, my project was actually on women issues. And it was, why do women fall out at that midpoint in their career in banking? And, one of the things that we saw was really around issues of when you've just started having your children, balancing or not balancing, but that's, issues around work and life challenges and all of that. And, so one of the things that I deliberately started doing after that research, it was a research that we conducted with, I think, 15 commercial banks. And the findings were similar across all banks. I then decided deliberately to continue mentoring women, especially at that middle management level. Informally, my organization has a formal mentoring program, but informally to speaking to a number of ladies at that level to ensure that the weight of family life doesn't make them drop off, and helping them understand that this thing can be done. So I feel that that's also one thing a number of senior women need to do to ensure that we do not have women dropping out at that level. Because the statistics show that at the entry point in banking, it was a balance, 50% women, 50% men. But by the time they get to middle management, it had dropped to somewhere around 20, 25, and even worse by the time they got to senior management. And so the more we bring in things that can actually help women to stay in their careers, the more we mentor, coach, and encourage them, we will have that percentage improve over the years.
So it's definitely, as you've said, it's not something that's going to happen automatically. So you have to be very intentional,
yes,
very and very strategic, because as you rightly said, there seems to be a direct opposition, diametric opposition between the family growing years, the baby making years, the nurturing years, and that point where your career is actually meant to take off.
Yes.
As you rightly said, a lot of people dropped off. But so you obviously did not drop off. So that balancing act now, how have you been able to combine your work demands, and balancing other critical aspects of your life? So we know that you're well-rounded. You mentioned your family, so we know there are other aspects to you. So how do you bring that balance in? You're doing front-end business, there are P&L pressures, there's so much you're handling. What brings that balance in?
First and foremost, I don't think there's a balance. I don't think you can achieve a balance. So I think one is constantly juggling balls. And I was reading, I don't know if you read this book, the one Okonjo-Iweala, jointly, the Women and Leadership. So I was reading the story of the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinta Ardern, and she was saying, look, she can never balance this thing out. It's difficult to form an equilibrium in that kind of space. And I identified with her when she said that. She said that I'm constantly just juggling balls. Sometimes it seems like one is achieving a balance, and something just throws you out again, and you then bring yourself back. But what I see that I've done, and I would advocate this, and I'm sure most of us have done that, is to prioritize and identify things that are critical in your life. So for me, the critical things will be my relationship with God, my family, my job. So those ones are the things that I try. I do not always achieve it. But I try to make sure that one doesn't overshadow the other. So I also have an excellent, and I spoke to that earlier on, support network, which I don't think I could have achieved the milestones I've achieved if I didn't have that support. So for me, because I'm married, I have that one level of support. For those that are not married, there are other, in our community, we have different levels of support. So my family, my husband, my children, my community, my friends, and my extended, community, all add up to being that community of support for me. So please, women, we must always, we are not rocket scientists, we are not super women. Call on those networks, call on those helps that you require from your various communities. If not, you will just have, constant headaches and not be able to move forward. So prioritize, realize that you can't do everything on your own. Call on help when you need it, and draw from Okay. From those, resources that are available to you to help you balance the act, or try and balance it and create some level of equilibrium for yourself. So those are the things that I've used. I've had many times where I have had to get out of the house without getting ready when they were growing up. But because my husband runs his own business, he's able to cover up for some of those things. So, use your whole community to help you create that balance is what I will say. And then prioritize the things that I pick my battles, really. Some of the things I know that I don't have the time to fight over. I don't bother, both on the home front and everywhere around me. It just doesn't make sense to me. So I conserve my energy and make sure that I'm using them for the things that are critical and important to me.
So that you just said those three very important words. Pick your battles. So you're not designed to fight every single battle. Pick your battles, pick your battles. And there's something else that you said about that network, that support network. I think many times as women, we tend to feel that because there's this thing that we say women, we're all great at multitasking and doing, several things at the same time, which is true, which is fine. But should we really be doing everything at the same time by ourselves? Yes, something has to get done. So I like what you said about prioritizing, identifying, what's the critical thing? What do you for yourself? So I'm sure there'll be times where you've had to make that choice to say, you know what are the things that I have to do? Yes, it has to get done, but does it have to get done by me? So who else can do this? And there's something else that you said, which I want us to touch on briefly, is on this matter of networking. When it comes to networking, I think women, generally speaking, are terrible. If you tell, when I terrible in the sense that if you tell us, raise my hand too, honestly. I think there are times when, if we're saying, okay, come to work, you go to work, go to this, anything that's for somebody else we do. But when it comes to doing something for yourself, and it's not necessarily about promoting yourself, but as you rightly said, you have to be seen. There's something that someone said once, if you don't tell people, here I am, very few people will say, okay, there you are. And so I think for many of us, we're not good at saying, here I am. So for people who are, it's not their natural inclination, that they're shy, or maybe we've been told, oh, don't, and somehow we said, you shouldn't look as though you are trying to aspire to anything, just be happy where you are. So for someone who's trying to break out of that mold, what should that person do? How does one break out of that?
Okay, so I'll use myself as an example, because again, my natural bit is to be on my own, and when I go for an event, I just want to be around there and just be there. You don't necessarily have to talk. If people come and talk to you, that's fine. But when I started my journey and knowing that I needed to mix a lot more, so again, my husband is opposite of me, so that also helps. So I remember that we were deliberate about it, and he knew what my shortcomings were in that space. So we will go together to an event, and when we get there, he's already, people doesn't even know, he's talking to everybody, So he decided, we talked about it, and he decided that, look, he had to be deliberate to help me with it. So when we get to an event, he will say, okay, that person there looks like she too doesn't know how to mix. Why don't you go and talk to her? So first thing is identify people in a room that also are a bit uncomfortable or not very, very quiet and on their own, so especially at cocktails. So I started it like that. So I would look for people in the room that, were not too sure of themselves, or people are not speaking to, and I would walk up and break the ice. And I found out that in doing that, I realized that a number of people were actually like that. So it's not everybody that has that ability to just get into a room and start talking. So first thing is you must get out of your comfort area and go for an event. And my work in treasury and investment banking actually also opened me to that, because there's a lot of networking in treasury, not necessarily with people you work, your colleagues in the institution, but colleagues in other banks because of the nature of the work. So that also helped me. So when you don't feel like going, just get up and go, especially when you know that you're going to meet people that can add value to you. Just get up, go. And when you get there, decide not to just, sit down and look. Decide to speak. And I'm not the best at it yet, but I know that looking at where I'm coming from, there's a lot of improvement over the years. And I know that, and I realize that people also genuinely want people to speak to them. And so you start off by just saying, starting a conversation. It could be anything. You could compliment the person with what they are wearing, or just something that will start a conversation. Or if you have been listening to the news that day and there's something that you feel you just want to talk about, use it to break the ice, and then the conversation flows from there. And I realize that once you've started that conversation, people just generally pick it up and they continue to talk. So in summary, get up and go. Don't sit in your house and expect that networking will come and happen there. No. When you get to events, look for people you can that are like you and are looking for people to talk to and just start a conversation. If there are no people there, you know, if there are no lonely people, look for people that you can start a conversation with, and you'll be okay. Yeah, but something you have to constantly teach yourself and be deliberate about, and don't give up. The first time you might feel that you've been ignored, keep at it, and you get better at it.
Fantastic. So now let's get to where you are now, which is, so we've gone through the journey and you're here at the boardroom, and we know now that you're here, right? And you're functioning at this level. In looking back, in retrospect, how would you say someone should prepare? You mentioned earlier that this was something that you sort of had in the back of your mind. So, even though there were twists and turns here and there, it was something that was in the back of your mind. But how does someone actually prepare for the boardroom? How does someone who's starting off a career as a middle management, even in senior management, saying, okay, ultimately, what are the things I need to do to prepare?
So, okay, so things you do to prepare first, and I keep emphasizing that, be on top of your game, knowledge. Especially for women, and I know that we have both men and women on the call today. So for everyone, knowledge is very important. You must master your game. You must, in whatever area. I am now a generalist, several areas, treasury, SME banking, all of it. Make sure that you know your stuff. Nobody is going to invite you to the board because they like. Yeah, they can invite you because they like you, but it must be because they like you because you have value to add. So your leadership must always be value-based. It must always be, on that board. Please do not get on the board because of the connection. Connections are very important, but connections can only take you far. Very soon you'll be discovered if you do not know your stuff. So, one of the first things you must do is you must have intense knowledge, to get you to the board, because the board is the board members are diverse, and there must be something that you are bringing that will be adding value to the members of the board. So that's the first thing in preparing yourself. Make sure that you have the knowledge, that would be attractive to the board for them to make you a board member. We talked about the issue about networking. It's also very important, because when they will think of people they know. You're not going to bring a stranger. If you are, if you own an organization and you're looking for people to bring on your board, the chances of you bringing someone you do not know onto your board is slim. It must be somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. So that's your network also. So then also be part of a network that can also encourage you and bring you up when there are opportunities to come on board. There are a number of board platforms now, especially for women, and there's one that is the Boardroom Africa, which is something I would also ask that women also subscribe to. What they do is, in Boardroom Africa, is they profile you for boards. Once you, and so when there are openings in organizations and they want men, women, they go sometimes to these organizations and they then ask them for people they can recommend. So it's always good to be part of those networks that can refer you and mention within your organ. If you're ascribing to be a board member within your current organization, it will not be bad if you are able to get yourself into different areas of the organization, build your experience beyond just one area. I know a person who didn't get a particular CEO role in another organization because her experience was considered very narrow. And the person that got the role was somebody whose experience was considered to be broad. So again, it's good to be a specialist, but also do not narrow yourself so in such a narrow way that you know nothing else about or one or two other areas. So hey, you don't have to be a generalist like me. Pick one core area and also know a bit about one or two other areas so that when they are looking for, because board wants, they want a bit more diversity, they want broadness. So that when you're speaking, when there are discussions in the boardroom, you can navigate those discussions around across different areas. So I would say that hold on to one special area as your core, but also pick one or two areas within the organization that you also know some stuff about, and that would help you prepare for the boardroom. It's good to also have mentors within your organization, senior mentors that can recommend you when there are openings. So when there have been when conversations are going on within the organization, yes, the names that quickly come to mind are the ones when they're saying, there's an opening in a role. Sometimes some names will quickly come up immediately. And then, sometimes it could be the deciding factor when certain roles are being considered. So look for mentors within your organization, even if your organization doesn't have a formal mentoring system, informal mentoring. You're not looking for those mentors to become people that you'll be gossiping with. I know we've all moved beyond all of that, but there'll be mentors that can guide you within the organization and also mention your name because they know you're doing the right stuff.
So I think there's something you touched on which is very important, the fact that, and I think this is particularly for women now, we don't realize that we need to have advocates, particularly where we're not physically present. Yeah. Because many times, like I said, the woman is rolling up her sleeves. And not just women, there are men as well who just feel that, okay, like you said, let my work speak for me. But ideally, there should be somebody else who has actually observed that this person is doing this work and can mention it. So how does one actually make sure that their work is getting known without seeming, like, oh, notice me type of thing, or being, trying to seem as if they're politicking? How would you suggest one would go about that?
So it's subtle. You mustn't be in the face of people that you're going around talking to all the seniors. Just be selective. Identify one or two seniors that you feel, again, you've known yourself, so hopefully you have known these people around, you understand that they have values that are close to what you also have identified as your own values. So for me, character is very important. Integrity is critical. So if I'm looking for a mentor within an organization or an advocate, I'll be looking for someone who wants to do right, someone who speaks the truth at all times, someone who has candor, someone who stands for the truth, someone who is not afraid to be wrong, someone who wants to speak the truth at all times. Those are the kind of people that I would look out for. And I'll say, depending on what your own value systems are, depending on what you're looking out for, also look for seniors in the organization who you can identify with. And you don't necessarily have to be speaking to everybody. Just identify one or two people that you feel are critical in the organization and can speak up for you when the time is right.
Fantastic, thank you. So now you mentioned something very critical. You talked about character and integrity. So when it comes to the board now, what is the role of integrity, especially around ethics? Because at that point, at that level, you are the decision maker. So you're the group of decision makers for the direction of an organization, and everything else will flow from there. So what are the sort of required ethics? What role does, like you've mentioned character and integrity, but what sort of ethics are required in the boardroom?
So it really depends. There are different types of boards. I would say there are three different kinds of boards. So there's the ones that you just come just to fulfill unrighteousness, as they would say. So nobody speaks, and maybe just one person speaks, and decisions are made. And there's the extreme one which I would consider a progressive board, where everybody speaks their mind. So it also then depends on the kind of board that you are in. And I would say that the culture of an organization will determine the culture of the board. So if it's an open organization where candor is expected, then again, the tone is set at the top. I would expect that that board would also be one of that nature. I would love a board that is a progressive board where there's integrity, everybody speaks, there's a culture of trust. And again, I'm big on trust. And, you trust one another, you speak the truth to yourselves. Everyone is free to converse and hear their own view. I would love a board where there's intellectual honesty, so if somebody is saying something that doesn't make sense, you should be able to say politely that I don't agree with this. This is what I believe in, So I want a board where there's full disclosure and there's confidentiality. So I don't want a board where in the board meeting, you've said certain things, and right after the meeting, everyone in the organization already knows what has been discussed, and there are boards like that. So for me, I want a board where there's confidentiality, there's a culture of trust, there's integrity, there's respect, mutual respect for one another. I've sat in some other boards many years ago where there's a bit of talking down to one another, or cutting you when you're speaking. Another board member cuts into your conversation, and there's just not mutual respect. I don't want to be in that kind of board. There are boards like that. So for me, the ethics of the board really will be determined by the culture of the organization, and so we need to pick the kind of boards we sit in. And the boards we sit in must be those boards where integrity is the watchword, and all the various yardsticks for integrity are what is being propagated on the board. And like I said, openness, candor, conversations are open, and we can come to decisions that will be for the overall benefits of the organization. So those will be for me what the ethics of a board, an ideal board would be.
So basically, so it's more, I guess, for the board to function effectively, let everybody's voice be heard.
Yeah.
What you're saying is that everybody has something to add to the conversation, so let everyone's voice be heard.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if not, why are you on the board then? If you're on the board because you want diverse experiences, and everybody's experience adds up, and if people are not allowed to air their views, then I think that the board is short-changing itself and not taking the full value of the variety of experience in the room.
So we've talked about the requirements. So that's now being a board member now. Is there anything else? So going from, if I may use the word employee, normal employee, regular Joe, to now being a board member. So are there additional commitments that are required? So for example, now you are the face, you are representing a particular institution. So are there particular commitments, are there additional commitments, requirements? I know there's some boards, especially some NGOs, they require some financial contribution, things like that. But for a limited liability company, what are the additional commitments that are required from you?
Oh, okay. So they are for limited liability, they are non-additional. Beyond that, you are taking some personal responsibility, which is huge. So unlike time past where it was more a collective responsibility, now you've actually signed that if the organization does certain wrong things, you are held personally liable as a director. So yes, there's a desire to be on the board, but we also have to be careful which boards we sit on, because we are taking personal liability, So it's also very critical that you are careful the kind of boards that you're on. So for instance, in banking now, if there's a rendition of false returns, for instance, or if you make an error in even the returns you render and you are found culpable, the organization is penalized, but individual directors are also penalized. Monetary penalty, you pay, yes, you pay, you pay. So, so yes, there's a desire to be on the board, but you also know that you're carrying some level of responsibility on that. So that's why I'll say that, read those board papers very well. Sometimes we don't read enough of the documents, and sometimes some organizations do not give you enough time before board meetings. Please insist that you have, some people say 72 hours, some people say 1 week. Please make sure when you sit on the board, they give you enough time to go through those board papers. You attend the trainings that they put in place for board members so that you understand the liability that you're getting yourself into.
Fantastic. So we've had you talking for quite a bit now. So what I'll just do now, just open it up to the audience. Yes. Thank you. Let's give you a feedback. So if anyone has any questions, maybe what you can do is you can type it in the chat group and I can read it out, or should we attempt muting, or you can raise your hand. So one of those.
So rather, while you're taking those questions, I saw a comment just flash that said that the board can also determine the culture of the organization. Very correct. And I did say that the tone is set at the board. So it cascades down. So once that tone is set at the board, you ensure that you then put in policies, processes, and procedures to drive the culture and the habits of the organization. So very, very true.
And I think particularly, especially as you're going to, as directors in the financial institution anyway, as you're going to be held personally liable, then it's important that the right culture is set so that you don't people doing things that are contrary to
Yeah.
But what I was asked is that as people are putting their questions together, you mentioned something, and you said it quite a few times, the role of integrity, that when it comes to getting to the board level, I guess there's an expectation that you must have some level of experience, you would have that kind of skill. So, but if you had to choose, what I'm hearing you say that if as a director, if a board was coming together and making a decision about bringing somebody else on the board, and you had two people of equivalent level of experience, the key factor, the defining factor, that end factor would now be how trustworthy is that person? Has that person shown in terms of the levels of character and integrity? So I'm hearing it's a change, it's a decision maker, even at board level.
Yes, very, very correct. Integrity, you can't put a price to it. It's very critical. I would even go a step further to say that if there were two people and there's proven evidence that one has stronger integrity, if I may say that way, than the other, and the other person even had a bit more experience, I would say go for the person who you're setting is higher on integrity. Yes.
So because that means, I guess, because you're taking, the director is taking responsibility for the institution. It's no longer, I guess the difference would be when you're working in a specific role, it's you and that role. But at director level, you're actually taking responsibility for the institution.
Yes. Yes.
Very interesting. Then I'm just going to go to some other questions that had been sent. When it comes to now the learning, there's some questions I said about learning, that we're constantly learning, that with so much going on, how do you find the time to learn? Then the reality of life for many people, especially if you're in Nigeria, especially if you're in Lagos. So how do you find that time to learn new things?
You create time for what you consider important, is what I would say. And like I said, with this thing about work-life balance, you're constantly juggling the balls. So it's a sacrifice that you have to make. And I would say that for me, COVID has had its disadvantages. It's also had some advantages in terms of the working from home. Yes, it's more engaging, I would say. You're spending many hours on the job without even realizing that you're still working. But in terms of saving time in traffic, saving time in doing some other things, it has helped me personally. And I've found that I've been able to read more books and learn more during this period than I had done in some other time. I'm one person, I like to read, but one bad habit I developed over the years is that I start books and I sometimes don't complete them. So but I found that during this period now, I'm actually able to settle down more into reading and finishing books and also look for trainings. And it's not because I'm not doing the job or the work, but more that I'm not, because my role was a sales role, and Roland knows this, I travel a lot. So in between local airports, road trips, and sometimes I get car sick, so I can't read in the car. So a number of those road trips have been converted to Zoom meetings. So I'm saving time and I'm able to then read. So it has actually afforded me time to actually read more. So look into your own situation and circumstances, what I'm saying, and create time for what you consider important. And I remember many years ago in Treasury, when I was running Treasury of another bank, because of the work in Treasury, you have to constantly be educating yourself, understand the markets, know what is going on across the world and all of that. So when I get back home, it's not a time for me to say that I will not spend time looking at what the markets are doing. I had to do those and make that sacrifice. It was important to me, it was important for my job, because next day, some things might have changed in the world and it would have affected the position that I'm taking. If I'm not aware of what has happened, then I'll lose money for my institution. So to remain at the top of your game, I keep saying that it's important that you learn and you make time to learn. There's no choice about that. Very critical. It is important to your career, important to your life, you make time for it.
So there's a question, a direct question, and it says, so what do you do when you're willing to leave your comfort zone, but the organization is not offering that support, and there are other openings, elsewhere? So what do you do?
Leave the organization. If you can. So let me take it this way. So sometimes the organization, because again, I was very fortunate that it kept showing me at the time when I'm getting bored, you throw something else my way and I'm doing it. So I consider myself very fortunate. So if the organization doesn't throw those opportunities your way, two things you can do, and I said, jokingly said leave, but that's also an option. If another organization would expose you to that opportunity you're looking for, of course, take it and then leave. But if they would not, within the organization, what you can also do will be that combine roles. So you're doing your daytime work and you're also volunteering to see in that area. That look, I can add value also here. Let me also help in that area. And I know that some organizations might not allow that, but some organizations would also let you, okay, if you can do something else in addition to what you're currently doing. It might be a subset of that other work function that you're doing. But what that does for you is helps you understand that other area. And you're building some level of experience. So if you then decide that you want that to be your core function and you're going to be interviewing in another organization for that role, at least you have some hands-on experience that you can speak to during the course of an interview. Do you understand? So I'm saying that, yes. So if they will not allow you, begin to look into another area within the organization that you can add on to what you're currently doing. gain some experience in that. It will be tough work for you because you're doing 1.5 work, but then continue to do it. And then when an opportunity opens up within your organization or outside the organization, with the experience you now have, you can adequately interview in another organization for it. That's what I would suggest.
Thank you. Then written question. So we'll have someone's hand up on it. So I'll just take the written question first. It says, there's a particular private company that sees the company secretary as a mere gatekeeper, not really a board member. So what's your take on this?
So again, each organization and their ethos, the things that are critical to them, they've defined it that the board, this company secretary role is not a board role. So it depends on what the organization wants for itself. I will ask a follow-on question. Do you then sit, do they allow you to take minutes as company secretary, even though you're not a board member? Are you in attendance in that board meeting? If the answer is yes, then at least you're privy to everything that they are discussing in that meeting. You do not necessarily have to be a board member to be a company secretary. And I know that there are men, even in my current institution now, the company secretary is not a full member of the board like that, but she's allowed to be in the board meeting to take minutes. So she sits, she's in the board, it's a funny situation, I know, but she sits there, takes all the board minutes, presents the board's minutes to the chairman of the board, and is part of the meeting. But what she won't do is, when the minutes are read, she will not be the one to pass any of the, what do they call them now?
Motions.
Yes, the motions, thank you, Malaya. She will not be the one to pass the motions or second the motions, but she sits in the meetings at all times. So I would say to you that it depends. The organization has a right to determine the level they want the company secretary to be at. But I don't think there's any set rule regarding best practice when it comes to that, even though I know that a number of company secretaries are members of boards of the organizations.
Fantastic, thank you. So Adeze, you can unmute yourself now. Adeze.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for this platform. It's been quite insightful. I love the conversation, and I'm sure it will help me through my career journey. Thank you, Mrs. Smith. I would like to make a comment and ask a question. So first of all, my comment, in addition to, I think when you talked about mentors and networking within the organization, I think it's one thing I found out is that a lot of female colleagues, female workers find it difficult to show up. So sometimes projects may come up, I think it's important for people to show up and say, they're interested in taking part. That way your face, your voice, and your work is also seen. My question is, what would you say? Because a lot of people, especially the female folks, wait until things are perfect, right, before they step up. And so that's a common trait, and that's imposter syndrome. I think that's a major issue for a lot of women, a lot of female workers. What would you say to that? Did you ever suffer that, and how did you overcome it? Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much for that. So you're right. And women, I guess because of the way society has been, we are constantly trying to prove ourselves. So versus a man who, once he's confident in what he knows and he's ready to just go along immediately. One thing I would suggest for us, and I've gone through that, is that for us women, we need to be very aware of our strengths and not constantly stick to our weaknesses. A lot of times we come from the point of, oh, I cannot do this, or I'm not yet at that level, rather than, oh, I have achieved this and I'm sure that I can grow into it. So I would advise us as women to speak more to our strengths than to always knock ourselves. It's just a mindset that we need to get away from. And I think it's probably the way we've been, especially Nigerian women, the way we've been brought up. Our mothers in particular want you to be perfect. They want your, and I always joke, growing up and working with my mom being a banker herself, and someone that was very into fashion, would always want you to look your best. So she doesn't want a strand of hair out of the way. And I'm not particularly like that. So, you're used to everything being spick and span, everything must be in order. But life isn't necessarily like that. And that's what we need to realize, that like our men, we will continue to learn as we go and improve. So once we have certain level of knowledge, test your knowledge and keep going, keep learning as you go, and you will get better. So I would say that for me, I also like things to be done perfectly. I like to feel that I have done, I'd like to feel that I am the best in certain things before I step out. But I'm learning, and I guess that with the kind of things I've done, I've realized that I would not necessarily be the expert at the first instance, but I will learn as I go. And that's what the various roles I've taken up have shown me. And it's helped me understand that I will learn from colleagues, I will learn from juniors, I will learn from seniors, and I will also learn on my own. So what I would say to women is, do not unduly beat yourselves. Once you have, once you're given something to do and you feel you have basic knowledge, take up the challenge and build on those experiences and knowledge as you go along. But like I constantly say, do not fold your hands when you have been given that role, because everyone is looking at you to ensure that you succeed. Make sure you scale up. Make sure you continue to learn, and that way you'll be able to prove that you can do the work that you have been given. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So Jumoke has a question, and she's asking, how do you break out of career stagnation, carrying out the same role, though in an excellent manner, but you're not growing? How do you break out of that stagnation?
Interesting. How do you break out? So again, if within, I'm trying to think of a scenario that I can play now that would help. I'd rather maybe you come in with maybe an example too. So again, the way I did mine was to go have a conversation with my supervisor at that point in time to say, look, you know what? I think that I've had enough of this role. Again, remember, I'd done this over 2 institutions, cutting across, I would say, about 10 years. And I just knew I needed something different. So you either take the bull by the horn and step out and let them know, you know what? And I chose to step out and say, you know what? I want something different. So that's one thing. And I remember that when I took that audit function, that role, one of the agreements we had when I was saying I didn't want the role, one of the agreements I had with my CEO was that, one of the promises he made to me, which he fulfilled, was that when there is a role that you prefer, when a role that you prefer comes up, I will make you an offer. And, so at the time when I was then finishing my MBA and then getting bored again, an opening came up and he truthfully offered me that role and I got it. So when you feel that your career is stagnant, and if you have been in that organization for a long time, you have proven yourself, you have an excellent track record, you should be able to go up to your supervisor and say, look, I want something more. And if they consider you to be someone valuable, they will try and strike a balance between the needs of the organization and your own. If they do not do that, they stand a chance of losing you. And I don't think that an organization that treasures its valuable people will want to lose you. So again, value. Once you are adding value in an organization, hopefully you can have those conversations and say, what you rather have. And note, in my own case, treasury wasn't necessarily taken away from me. It was added to my function. So they stepped up the person as a treasurer, and then I then had a supervisory role over that person in addition to other responsibilities at the initial point. So I had a broader range of activities that were now under my supervision, that I was now supervising. So I think that if we are upfront and open, and the organization values you, they can actually open you up to some other opportunities. And if that isn't happening, and you're middle management, whatever level you are, it might be time for you to begin to look at other options that you can take that will help to satisfy your own career desires.
Thank you. So Pedro has a similar question. So Pedro is asking, what do you do? And this is now speaking to mentorship. What do you do when you really can't identify any board level members who share your values? So remember you talked about approaching people who have similar values. So does that mean you're in the wrong company and you shouldn't bother to aim for the board? Or is there a way around this?
I think that's trouble. If you already know that your board members, do not share your values, then again, I would ask, why are you still there? Because you're going to be frustrated, especially if you're not at that senior level where you can change their values, and value, again, these are things that people have formed people over the years. So the likelihood of you changing anyone is very slim. So again, even if you get into that board, you probably will get very frustrated because they will not, they will just see you as one person. You'll just constantly be at loggerheads with the board members and you'll not be able to make the impact that you probably desire to make. So if you do not want a life of frustration, you might consider your options and maybe you'll find your luck opportunity somewhere else that will be better than where you currently are, is what I would say. But again, I don't know the full details. But based on what you said, this is what I would suggest.
So there's someone else who has a peculiar situation where she found herself in a job that has little or nothing to do with her career aspirations, but she has a job. But even in that role, she's been developing herself, hoping that one day that is in her ideal line. So what she's doing now and what she wants to do are still different. She's been developing herself in the line of what she wants to do, but she's asking herself now, is she wasting her time? She should not just focus on where she's at now, rather than keep looking at the ideal that she's been looking at. So what would you advise her?
So sometimes your ideal might not be your reality. So the first thing would be, depending on what your financial status is. So again, sometimes finance, has a way of guiding your path and not allowing you follow what you consider your ideal or your passion. So if your financial standing requires that you still stay in that path that your organization has pushed you into, you might want to stay there. And hopefully, if your organization can push you in your ideal, then that's perfect for you. So that's one route I would suggest. Okay. So that's one thing you need to consider. So if you're certain that the organization will not help you get into your ideal, then you might want to move in that direction that will push you there. And that again might mean moving into another organization. But again, you have to then do your own assessment yourself. If your pressures say that you should stay where you are and forget your ideal and build your career in the path where your organization has led you into, that might be a path you should stick with. But if you feel that you can experiment and you have time to build on your finance and your family issues are not precluding you, and I know that it might not be your perfect situation, you might then consider, pursuing your dream, and hopefully that would work out well for you. So again, you have to consider the situation you're in and work with what will be best for you. If I was in your situation right now, at the level I have attained and what I've been able to build up for myself, I am not there yet, but the pressures for me now, I would say, are a bit different, not as where I was maybe 7, 8 years ago financially. I would say I will take a step of faith and go and follow my ideal. But again, remember, like I said, it depends on where you are in the spectrum, and you need to be able to identify that yourself and decide on how you want to progress or how you want to move.
So we have another question that says, what do you do when you find yourself in an environment where there's more competition than collaboration, especially amongst your female colleagues? So is that, what do you do?
Okay, be yourself. So look, every organization will have people that want to compete and those that want to collaborate. So you just hope you find yourself where there is a balance, or where there is some, and I would say there, just be yourself. I've worked in similar organizations where some women want to compete, some men and women want to compete, some men and women want to collaborate. Pick your tents with the ones that want to collaborate, and try and work with those ones that want to compete, but do not work with them to your own detriment. If they do not make you comfortable, do what you have to do. Do your work, be sincere, but then ignore. For me, they are irrelevant. So they will try and pull you down, but you just continue doing what is right. And I think that at any point in time, check yourself and be sure that you're doing what is right. And worry less about those people that choose to compete. And that's my own personal experience. I will continue to focus on what I believe is right, collaborate with those that want to collaborate with me. Hopefully, in the journey, I will drag some of those that choose to compete into my own space, and they will become collaborators. And I think I've done that with 1 or 2 people over the span of my 20-something years of working. Yes. But do not allow them to make you become like them. Please, do not allow them change you. It is bad manners. It is bad attitude, and something that we shouldn't indulge in and we shouldn't encourage in organizations. Please. Competition has its own space, but not an unhealthy one. Not the one that wants to pull the next person down. So if I'm competing in a healthy manner, that's not bad. But when it becomes one that wants to drag the next person down, and that's very unhealthy.
So thank you so much. The last question, because we're fast coming to the stop time. So this is a question that also rings true to me. So what do you do if you're not seen as being aggressive enough, that in the environment, what the person's functioning in an environment where it seems they feel they need to be aggressive, and they don't seem to be aggressive enough, but they believe they're delivering. So what do you do? I can connect with that.
Yeah, what do you do? Okay, so what do you do in that kind of situation? And I've learned to toughen up a bit. Life has shown me that in the business world, they don't hold prisoners, right? You just have to stand your ground and not allow yourself to be tossed around. And I remember a few days ago, interestingly, one of my colleagues was saying, they were talking about me, I was there and they were talking about me. And after they had said certain things, one person said, "You forgot something. Buki is very persistent. She can, in fact, sometimes persistent to a point where it can get annoying." And I had a good laugh. So I might not be overtly aggressive, but I will push to ensure that I get what I want. And so for me, there's a difference. So be persistent, push to get what you want, especially when you know what you want is the right thing, especially when it is not about your own personal desires, but the desires and the things that your team needs to be able to achieve their objectives. Push it and push it. So if they say you're not aggressive because you're not standing over people's heads, I won't support. I don't think that's what you want. But if they're saying that you should get aggressive and be persistent to achieve the goals, achieve your work, then I'll say maybe you need to speak up a bit more and let them understand that you will push to achieve. So aggression can connote something a bit negative in my mind, but if it is aggression to achieve what you're doing, then I think that there are subtle ways in which you can achieve that, and you can remain persistent and achieve your work. Brother, maybe you want to share something on that too. I can see that, yeah.
Maybe so from personal experience, maybe I can speak to this, where I know there's times where people have felt, types of words they'll use for me, say, oh, you're gentle, you're quiet. I'm like, I'm not gentle and I'm not quiet. I don't necessarily feel that I need to make the most noise in the room because, especially in meetings where people feel they just need to be seen to be speaking, but my view is, what is the outcome of all that talk? That talk must lead to something. Are you delivering on that something? And I guess the part of what I need to probably learn to do a bit more is, once you have done that something, communicate that it has been done, right? So it's not necessarily being seen as being the most, the loudest talker, because those who talk a lot tend to sort of like own the room, try and, as soon as they walk in, they're talking, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they want to actually bring in results, and those who are actually quietly bringing the results are still quiet. So it's something that I think it's doing the work, but as I said, I'm also learning that once you've done something, if you don't raise your hand, nobody's going to say, oh, there you are, and getting the right balance,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
And the last question is, have you had a situation where you've been at loggerheads with another board member?
Interesting question, because these have been asked before. So yes, different. So at loggerheads, maybe not, because again, I'm not I'm not confrontational. And again, so that speaks also to aggression. So I won't say that I'm a confrontational person. So with a board member, we've disagreed on issues. Okay, I'm remembering one now. Okay, so I've disagreed with board members on issues. So in a board meeting, we'll air your view, and sometimes you disagree. And but because it's a cordial board, you are allowed to air your view and speak your mind, and it doesn't necessarily get into an uproar. So, but I'm allowed to air my opinion and say, no, I disagree, this is what I think, and you argue your points out, and it's not a matter of who is winning, it's what's best for the organization. And so we talk through those situations, and we agree to disagree, is what I see. Have I had times where, there's an outburst? Yes, but not in a board meeting. And I think that one definitely has to avoid those outbursts in board meetings. So if there is some board member that is very upset about the matter, what I would suggest is, at that point, you probably want to, play softly and not speak, and let the person hear their feeling, so that you do not necessarily upset the person more. So to the situation where outside the board meeting where I had an issue, yes, I have. And yes, it was, but for me, the other person, was a bit aggressive and aired his grievances. What I did was calm myself down, because my inclination was also to bust out and speak, but I had to then control. So a bit of self-control came into play at that point. I was quite upset, but I managed to control my emotions and spoke a bit, but did not speak as articulately as I would have liked to speak at that moment. But we later on, after that moment, were able to come to a landing and agree on certain issues. So yes, I have had that, and this is how I handled it. Calm yourself down in such a situation. There's no point both of you being overtly aggressive or upset at that particular point in time. Let the fire die down before you then speak. And hopefully you get the other person to understand whatever point you are trying to make. I hope that answered that.
Thank you. So, wow. So we are at 5:30 on the dot, which means we've had you talking for almost 90 minutes.
Oh, wow. So, I was wondering what you'll be saying in that timeline, in that time frame. Yeah.
So thank you so much. But just to wrap up on what the key points that you said, first of all, that is action, not words. That it's important we demonstrate our action. It's important that we're people of character and integrity, that even when you have people of the same level of expertise, character and integrity is a differentiating factor. It's important to prepare not just yourself, but those around you. So prepare your successors and make an impact in the environment you're in. It's important to take up all those, those roles that may not look so exciting, but could be an opportunity in disguise, and be on top of your game. Never stop learning.
Yeah.
On top of the game. Be someone who adds value. And then when it comes to this thing called, well, maybe we should, I guess maybe we shouldn't call it balance. Work-life management, since a work-life balance. Prioritize, look at what's important at that point in time, set your priorities, look at what's critical, and have a support network. We can't do it alone. And I remember what you said, no, you're not Superwoman or Superman. Nobody's Superwoman or Superman. And pick your battles. Pick your battles. You can't put all the fires out. Be selective in the opportunities that you take. The fact that an offer came up for a board role doesn't mean you'll automatically take it. Look at what is going on around you. And basically your career, you need to take personal responsibility for it. So yes, I've summed up 90 minutes in 2 minutes. There are some more questions coming, but I'm just going to pause now in the interest of time. Otherwise, I think we'll probably have you talking, because people are sending direct messages as well. So I'm just in interest of time. So I just want to say thank you, Mrs. Smith, for this opportunity, for talking to us, for sharing. Was meant to, and I was joking that this was actually meant to be like a closed group session, but people were phoning for, So what that tells me is that this is something that resonates with a number of people, and it's
Thank you.
So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Olayo. Thank you.
Thank you for all those who've attended. And yes, so it's exciting doing this now. So this is our first session this year, first open session this year. And God willing, we'll have one, each month. So we'll somebody else, we'll bring people in from different sectors and we'll learn, because I think, as you rightly said, there's knowledge, there's power in people coming together. So this is a form of networking. So for those who may not have been able to have the opportunity to know you personally, at least have been able to glean some things from your experience.
Yeah,
so,
thank you.
I don't know if you have any final words for us.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I think it was an engaging session and I thoroughly enjoyed myself. I hope everyone did too. And I wish everyone that has joined today a very, very good year. And I'm hoping to hear your stories in the future on how well you have done. And for those that are not yet on board, I would encourage you, it's not something far-fetched, it's not something impossible to attain. Keep aspiring and you would attain it. Just make sure that you continue to be, you continue to up your game, and I'm sure you'll do well. So thanks, Valeria, for organizing this, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Excellent. So for those who registered, since you registered, we'll try and send you a video of the session. So we all have the recording of today's session. So thank you so much for joining our conversations. And the next conversation will take place next month. And since we have your email now, so we'll be able to communicate with you what the next topic will be and who we'll be talking to next month. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Bye for now. Bye.